Good evening. Welcome to the Revere Journal and Revere TV Mayor's Debate with candidates Mayor Brian Arrigo and Councilor at Large Dan Rizzo. Thank you. This debate is being televised live on Revere TV from the Susan B. Anthony School. My name is Stephen Quigley of the Revere Journal, and I will be the moderator of tonight's debate. We are happy to welcome members of the Revere High School debate team, Xavier Alvarez, Shema Bouraj, Aha Amar Mansour, and Michael Ronsevich, who will be assisting in tonight's forum. We also want to acknowledge the many candidates who are running for office in this year's city election who are attending tonight's debate. We remind members of the audience to refrain from interrupting candidates when they are speaking. Please hold your applause until after the candidates deliver their remarks. Any outbursts will not be tolerated, and those audience members who interrupt the debate will be asked to leave. Let's keep this debate on the high road. We remind those in attendance of the quote from Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg: "We can disagree without being disagreeable." The format for the debate is as follows. It is going to be 4 parts. Part 1 will be determined by the flip of the coin. Each candidate makes a 4-minute opening statement Part 2, asking order, again determined by the flip of the coin. 4 questions were randomly selected by the candidates prior to the television debate. Asking order, again determined by the flip of the coin. Each candidate may ask the other candidate 2 separate questions. Each reply can be up to 2 minutes, and then the questioner can rebut for up to 2 minutes. And at the last part, part 4, the order was determined by a flip of the coin. Each candidate will then deliver a closing statement for up to 4 minutes. And now Xavier Alvarez will now ask the candidates to give their opening statement.
Each candidate makes a 4-minute opening statement, as decided through the flip of a coin. Mayor Arrigo will go first, and Councilor Rizzo will go second. Mayor Arrigo, you may make your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you to Stephen Quigley, the Revere Journal, for hosting this debate, and thank you to the Revere High Speech and Debate team for participating this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brian Arrigo, and I am the mayor of the city of Revere. I'm a proud 4th-generation Revere resident, raising my 2 boys, Joseph and Jack, the 5th generation, with my wife, Davine. This campaign isn't just about Revere's past or its present. It's about the future. My kids, your kids, and all of the people who will come to make Revere their home. I'm proud of all that we've been able to accomplish over the last 4 years. And I'm here to ask for your vote for re-election because there is so much more for us to do. Both candidates have track records, and the contrast between us is very clear. But the best way to capture that contrast is to talk about what I encountered when I walked into office 4 years ago. Unfortunately, we only have 4 minutes to talk about 4 years of accomplishments. But on day 1, when we raised the shades and shined daylight into the mayor's office in City Hall, we reversed mismanagement and neglect that we found while bringing the city into the 21st century. 4 years ago, the DPW was understaffed, treated with disrespect, and worked out of a facility that was simply unlivable. Today, if you talk to a DPW employee, they'll tell you that the respect has been restored. Their new home is well on the way, and their ability to make our streets safer and cleaner have never been better. 4 years ago, we invested in public safety. When I took office, both police and fire told me that they were dangerously understaffed. Our fire department needed a new fire station at the Point of Pines. They needed new equipment, and they needed new bodies. They got all of them. Our police department also needed new bodies. They needed more equipment, and they got a Shirley Ave substation to reduce crime in that neighborhood. 4 years ago, we implemented best practices and fixed the mismanagement in the mayor's office, making sure that we don't have to rely on the city's savings account to balance our budget, as it was under my opponent's administration. 4 years ago, in our school district, our classes were approaching 30 students per class. We have those numbers back down to the state average with a significant investment of 50 teachers. 4 years ago, our economy was shedding jobs with the losses of NECO, Suffolk Downs, and Wonderland Dog Track. We've been able to attract new jobs, new investments in these areas, and the unprecedented investment in commercial development that we will see at Suffolk Downs that my opponent opposes. We have Amazon coming to the city of Revere at the old NECO site, investing $40 million in our city and bringing 800 new jobs. Again, my opponent also opposes that. Tonight, just like the last 4 years, my opponent will not have anything positive to say about our accomplishments. But the people that we all trust agree. The state of our city is strong, the future of our city is bright, and I am the only one on this stage that has vision to continue moving our city forward. I ask again for your vote on November 5th this year. Thank you.
Councilor Rizzo, you may now make your opening statement.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. Let me say at the outset that I'm grateful and blessed by the support that this community has shown me during all my years in public life. I'm forever grateful for these opportunities. This election, and always has been, about the fundamental differences between me and Mr. Arrigo. It is my goal here tonight to lay out those differences that include what I did when I was mayor, what he did while serving as mayor, and what I will do if elected mayor this coming November 5th. I've always believed that this campaign and campaign promises should mean something, and I'm leaving that up to the voters as who has honored their promises. In 2015, when then candidate Arrigo was running for mayor, he criticized my administration for many things. He criticized me for residential development. He criticized me for traffic. He criticized me about my budget and spending. He criticized me about the number of employees that I hired. Now, 4 years later, Revere is at a tipping point. Under this administration, the city has been plagued by fiscal mismanagement, higher taxes, crumbling infrastructure, crushing traffic, overdevelopment, and overcrowded classrooms. To continue on this trajectory will surely lead to devastating consequences for our community. First, with respect to apartment development, the reality, despite what Mr. Arrigo says to people at their doors or in conversation, is that thousands of apartment units have been built or proposed, with thousands more in the planning stages. A total of 4,200 units. This is from a mayor who back in 2015 said we should hit the pause button. This rampant overdevelopment is gridlocking our roadways, overcrowding our classrooms, and taxing our infrastructure. Clearly, anyone who is paying attention can see that Mr. Arrigo has not hit the pause button. In fact, he's hit the fast-forward button. In a Globe article dated 10/3/18, Mr. Arrigo was one of 15 communities that signed Revere on to a plan to bring in 185,000 additional residential units. Just last year, Mayor Arrigo signed on as one of those 15 cities and the article is here to prove it. Well, he may want to hit the fast forward button, but my plan is to hit the stop button so we can once again fix our antiquated zoning. If Mr. Arrigo had supported my decision to impose a 2-year moratorium back in October of 2015, many of these massive apartment buildings that you see today would never have been built. To handle traffic that he complained about back in 2015, I believe we need to do several things. First, we need to invest in smart lighting. We need to increase our traffic division within our police department. And third, bring in a full-time traffic mitigation specialist. Finally, we need to lobby our state delegation to reinstitute the $25 million transportation bond bill that would create a commuter rail station at Wonderland Dog Track that had previously been approved by the legislature in Chapter 79 of the Acts of 2014. Doing nothing is not a viable solution. As for budget and spending, where do I even start? When candidate Arrigo was running for mayor, he was outraged that my budget was up $30 million and that I had hired 50 people. Millions more have been spent during this administration. In fact, his budget is up $50 million and an additional 125 employees. The good news is I had included 30 public safety officials. This administration has added 12. Our budget has ballooned to $217 million and an astonishing 125 additional employees that this city cannot handle. My plan going forward is going to be lowering the tax rate, but not by gimmicks at election time. It's going to be by controlling our budget and controlling spending, and that is the goal of any city or town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one thing, gentlemen. We need to really enforce the time limit, so both of you ran a little over in the first. So, thank you.
We will now be moving on to part 2. Just to reiterate what part 2 is, we will be asking there will be 4 randomly selected questions, 1 question by the Journal staff, and 3 questions by the Revere High School debate team. The 4 individual numbers for each question was put into a bucket and drawn by the candidate in alternating turns. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to reply to the question. Councilor Rizzo will be answering his question first, and then Mayor Arrigo will answer his question second. Councilor Rizzo, you may now answer your question. The question is, what do you believe is the most pressing issue in Revere, and what do you plan on doing to address it?
Well, clearly, thank you very much for the question. And clearly, the number one issue as I travel across the city is, without question, overdevelopment. It's the increase in traffic, it's the overcrowding of our classrooms, and it's the rampant spending that we're seeing in City Hall. Mayor Arrigo cannot deny that his budget is up $50 million with 125 new positions. That is just simply not sustainable. And we need to be able to control these things as a community. And the way you do that is have a commitment to it. I had asked for, back in October of 2015, to implement a 2-year moratorium on large-scale residential development that was ignored by this administration. Had we done that, we could have fixed our antiquated zoning and brought this city back to a point where it makes sense. We cannot take any more uncontrolled development. It's not what the developers want, it's what Revere wants. And we have to pay attention to the needs of our community. Just go down and talk to people on the Boulevard, talk to people in the Point of Pines, talk to people on Ocean Avenue. I was amazed when I went to a meeting on Ocean Avenue back a few months ago where 4 different developers were pitching 5 different projects totaling 1,400 additional units. And now Mayor Arrigo is going to have you think that that's my fault. Had he just followed my lead He became mayor, he spoke against development, he spoke against traffic, he said our streets are clogged, we're being choked, but yet not a word going forward. We kept building and building and building. And that, to me, has hurt our city, and we need to take a breath to figure out, first, if we can fill these buildings, and second, how we're going to manage the impacts, because there are impacts, and I don't think we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet, what it's going to do to our public safety infrastructure. We have people right now in the Point of Pines that are complaining about lower water pressure, and I believe that lower water pressure is as a result of all these large-scale developments. Why should our residents have to suffer because of the actions of this administration? They need to listen to the people, and as far as I'm concerned, any good mayor listens to the people. Back when I asked for this moratorium, a question was asked for me by one of the councilors, why now? Why at election time? And I said, because as I've been going across the city, people have been complaining about it. And if you want to be a good leader and you want to be a good mayor, you should be listening to the people. And that's something you will always have with me if elected your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rizzo. Mayor Arrigo, I will now ask you your question. What would you do to manage the future development of Revere in a way that both builds the community and maintains our strengths?
So let me start by saying that Dan likes to talk about putting a moratorium on development for 2 years, but what he fails to mention is that as a city councilor, he could have proposed that at any time, not during an election year. He could have done it 2 years ago. But I'd like to talk about how that's bad policy, and your question points directly to this. When we talk about how we manage future development in Revere in a way that plays to our strengths as a community, we should also be talking about what those strengths are. So we're here as a community with strong social fabric. We have many families that have lived here for generations, like mine, because they're proud to call the city of Revere home, and they know it's a great place to raise a family. We've always been a place that's welcoming, a place where you can come, work hard, and make a better life for your family, no matter where you come from in the world. And Revere has always been a place where families can send their kids to excellent public schools and get a good quality of life. These are the things that make Revere such a special place and that we want to continue to develop as we move forward. So how do we do that? Sure, it's easy to talk about a moratorium. What we need to do, and what we've been doing for the last 4 years, is having high standards, making sure that development that happens in our city has a mix of uses, including open space. We do that by making sure that development that happens in our city brings in tax revenue that we use to invest in our quality public services. We do that by making sure that development that happens in our city creates job opportunities for all of our residents. We strive to make sure that nobody, not one single resident in our city, is left behind by the local economy that we're building. That's how we maintain the strength of our community and our social fabric. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Arrigo. Councilor Rizzo, your question is, considering both revenue and spending, what are your budget priorities for the city of Revere moving forward?
Well, thank you for that question, but I think I need to clarify something. Mayor Arrigo said that as a councilor I could have proposed a moratorium, but what he fails to mention is that as mayor I proposed a moratorium. He had the power to approve my request, but he didn't. He went on, he ran his election, he took office, and he built and built. Those are the facts. Those are facts. I like to deal in facts. Okay, as far as budget priorities. I'm glad we're talking about numbers because when Mayor Arrigo was running for office, he was telling everybody they were going to get a 10% tax break. You're going to get a 10% tax credit. Well, here we are 4 years later, and he's trying to tell people that their tax rate went down, as if they're not understanding that what they pay out of their checkbook has increased by 20%. That is simply remarkable. People, and I believe the voters are smarter than that. They know what they pay. To say that your assessment went up and your tax rate went down, that's meaningless when you are on a fixed income and you have to pay taxes.
Excuse me. Mayor, excuse me, but Mayor...
Well, so do I get more time? I didn't know that he was going to chime in and violate the rules.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Arrigo, for future reference,
thank you
please
for that.
refrain from
So as I was
interrupting.
saying, before he once again tries to tell you that your taxes went down, that is not the case, and it's controlling the budget. Mayor Arrigo criticized me because I hired 50 more people and our budget was up $30 million. It is not debatable. His budget's up $50 million with 125 new employees. Less than 10% of them are attributed to public safety. Nobody can tell me that that is a good formula for our residents out there that are working hard every single day, trying to make a living, trying to feed their families, and then they come for a little bit of help from the city, and what do they get? They get double talk. They get told that, oh no, your taxes really are going down. Don't worry about it. The tax rate's down. That's just nonsense, and it's not the truth. And if you don't know that, Mr. Mayor, you should not be the mayor, because you have to understand, that taxes, you have to understand that you base your budget on your expenses, not on assessment values. That's not how we budget to meet our expenses. And I think any reasonable person understands that. And the more money you spend, in your case, $50 million over 4 years, and like I say, 12 additional public safety employees, that is not a good way to spend our tax dollars. And I promise you tonight, it will stop on November 5th.
Thank you, Councilor Rizzo. And I would like to remind you all that candidates and that we will have to be able to, in order for this debate to work, we need to let the candidates speak and not interrupt them with cheering. I know that at times it may seem that we want to be a part of the debate, but in order for this to work, we have to be quiet and listen to what they are saying. Thank you. Now, Mayor Arrigo, your question is, what is your vision of Revere in the year 2030?
Let me just start by saying that Councilor Rizzo has repeatedly criticized me on three things: the budget, number of new hires, the increase in taxes. All of the numbers that Councilor Rizzo is putting out there are wrong. And tonight, we have live fact-checking happening on social media. They are all factually inaccurate. Everything that we've done since I've become mayor in 2016 has been with an eye toward the future while preserving our rich history. And we've done so in partnership with the residents of our city. Because it's not just me alone that will chart the course of our city. And that's why we've engaged the public in our master planning process, which will be 10 years old in 2030. That's why we engaged the public in the visioning of a new high school, which will be open by 2030. And that's why we had a development advisory group for the Suffolk Downs project, which Councilor Rizzo was invited to but neglected to show up to, much like his 4 years in office. which will be a vibrant space with amenities for all residents by 2030. Most importantly, Revere in 2030 will look very similar to the Revere that we all know and we all love. The same Revere that I grew up in as a kid. In the Revere that generations, including my family, that come, grew up in. We will continue to be a city of unique character and personality. Revere in 2030 will be a place where everyone supports each other, and where my sons, Joe and Jack, will take fierce pride in what it means to be from Revere. Finally, Revere in 2030 will be a city where people want to live, where businesses want to grow, where honest, hard-working city government keeps us on a path of unrivaled prosperity. That is what I see for Revere in 2030.
Thank you. Now we're coming to the part 3 of the debate, which is probably going to be the most interesting part. But please, we remind the audience, let each candidate has 2 minutes to give a rebuttal and ask a question. Please let them do it.
All right. So as he just mentioned, each candidate may ask the other candidate 2 separate questions. Each reply can be up to 2 minutes, and then the questioner can rebut for up to 2 minutes. Councilor Rizzo will ask the first question.
Well, thank you for that. And but just so you know, I don't believe in fact-checking on social media. It should be fact-checked in City Hall. So let's straighten that out. Mayor Arrigo, 4 years ago, you made several campaign promises. You promised a 10% tax break. You said you were going to stop the residential overdevelopment that is choking our streets and overcrowding our classrooms. You said you're going to professionalize city government. Now, 4 years later, our taxes are up 20%. You've built or proposed thousands of apartments with massive variances. You said you'd stop residential development, and now you look at the Shaw site and Suffolk Downs, and I'm wondering how you reconcile that. You said that you'd professionalize city government, and yet in the last 4 years, we've had 2 employees taken out of City Hall in handcuffs for misappropriation of funds.
Not true.
How can you reconcile the promises you made with what you actually delivered?
Good. We set ambitious goals walking into the mayor's office. We accomplished a lot of those goals. We created a 311 system to make sure that City Hall was more accessible. We instituted an HR department to make sure that City Hall was in compliance with state and federal laws. We brought City Hall into the 21st century. Revere has seen record levels of investment, including commercial development. And as I promised to the city of Revere, we reversed the Dan Rizzo era of 100% residential development along Revere Beach. And we've made sure that significant community benefits come along with any development that happens in our city. New restaurants, new small businesses, and we just announced Amazon creating 800 new jobs in our city at the former Necco site. We did all this while reversing the waste and mismanagement that you left behind to make sure that no mayor ever has to walk into what I walked into on day one. But let's talk about our record, and let's talk about the last 4 years and what we did to protect the taxpayer. Under my watch, we've implemented a 10% residential tax exemption for our most vulnerable residents, our seniors. We expanded the senior work-off program. We also took steps to help our veterans by creating a veteran work-off program. We protected our taxpayers by finding $2 million in 86 different accounts that Dan Rizzo forgot about. Let's not forget that under Dan Rizzo, your water and sewer bills went up 16%. Yet we were the first administration to cut your water and sewer bills 2 years in a row. I am happy and proud to compare my record to Dan Rizzo when it comes to protecting the taxpayer and the ratepayer of this city.
Thank you, Mayor Arrigo. Councilor Rizzo, you may now reply.
So where do I start? When I was mayor, when I left office, we had tangible assets that we could see. You could walk out and feel and touch. We revitalized all of Broadway. We re-energized Northgate Shopping Center by giving a tax increment financing agreement to Market Basket. And now you see 45,000 people a week in and out of that store that created hundreds of jobs for Revere residents. We built a new Hill School. We built and delivered a new football stadium complex. And we built and delivered on 3 new Little League fields at St. Mary's. I am happy that they finally got their snack bar and bathrooms that they had to wait 4 years for. And I'm happy for those kids down there and their parents and grandparents and other people. But we had tangible assets when I left office 4 years ago. I would love to know what tangible assets he is going to be able to point to other than pictures of buildings that he claims to have built. So with that, this happened 4 years ago, a distortion of my record. And once again, Mr. Arrigo is trying it again to tell people that we did nothing, that despite my budget going up $30 million, and by the way, our contracts were 2 years out. I had to negotiate retro contracts as well as 3 years forward. And we still only went up $30 million and hired 50 people, 30 of them public safety officials. That's what our city wants. Not 125 additional employees that run around the city. I don't even, a lot of people I know that work for the city don't even know what they do. So, we need to get a handle on this spending, and we need to deliver on promises, not just show people pictures of what they might get next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Councilor Rizzo. Mayor Arrigo, you may now ask your question.
Councilor Rizzo, there's been a lot of talk about scandals since you've been campaigning. And you've gone on record more times than I can count saying that you ran a scandal-free administration. But that's not exactly true. Just because the police weren't called down by your office, the City Hall does not make it scandal-free. Leaving behind the type of waste and mismanagement that you did is scandalous. There were over $2 million in public funds inactive. Not only that, but you used the mayor's office to benefit your own private insurance company. These are scandals. These are scandals, plain and simple. So I ask you how you're able to, in good faith, say that you had a scandal-free administration.
I'm finding it hard to believe that's a serious question. Do I have any ethics violations? Were there any arrests that were made? Why, again, you throw out these implications so people might think about it, but they're totally inaccurate. They're totally inaccurate. I got to tell you a quick story so I can respond to this. When I left office, I had a transponder in my car that had been billed to the city, okay? Had been billed to the city, and how much money can you possibly get on a transponder to go over the Tobin Bridge? Well, before I knew it, of course, Mayor Arrigo felt obligated to tell the Boston Globe about it. So I caught wind of it, and I said to my assistant, Joyce DiNuccio, I said, Joyce, go over to City Hall and pay this. So I made the check out to City of Revere. And I said, just fill in the amount in case they say it's $50, which that's what apparently it was. If it says $50, maybe it's $51. I left it blank. She came back with the check. And you know what her answer to me was? yeah, the city didn't pay it, you got to make it out to Easy Pass. So that is the type of leadership we have to make somebody look bad in the newspaper for something that wasn't done. He talks about ethics violations with my insurance company. Can you cite that, or is that on social media being fact-checked too? I am tired of the innuendos and false allegations that this administration has made. And it has to stop.
Mayor Arrigo, you may now reply.
Dan, it's clear to me, and it should be clear to everyone in this audience and everyone who's watching, that you don't know what a scandal is. $2.2 million missing is a scandal. Paying an employee $85,000 a year to work 19 hours a week just because he's a supporter is a scandal. Spending tens of thousands of public money on phone lines and computer lines that were never used is a scandal. But what should be more upsetting to everyone here and everyone watching tonight is that these are not just scandals of your own incompetence, the scandals that are evidence of your own greed while sitting in the mayor's office. We have an email available tonight that shows an interaction between your brother and yourself on city time, on a city email, talking about how you would cut an employee's hours just because they took their insurance away from Rizzo Insurance. That's not just a scandal. That's not just a scandal. It's disqualifying, and it should be disqualifying. Threatening to cut an employee's hours simply because her husband canceled his insurance with your company is textbook corruption. We have hard copies. We have hard copies of those emails available, and you'll be able to see firsthand what Dan has to say. This city deserves a mayor who has its interests in his heart. And when it comes to so-called scandals, I'm proud of my administration's swift action and what we did to uncover wrongdoing. Nothing was ever swept under the rug, nor will it be. There is a zero-tolerance policy for corruption on my watch.
Excuse me.
Will the audience please sit down?
Councilor Rizzo, you may now ask your second question.
Wow. That was corruption in the worst sense. The two employees that were let out in handcuffs, I guess that didn't matter to you. You were okay with that. But anyway, when you ran for mayor in 2015, you criticized me because my budget was up $30 million and I had hired 50 new people, 30 who I said before kept our homes and streets safer. However, you've upped the budget $50 million and hired 125 people, and as I said before, not even 10% of them are public safety related. And at the same time, you disbanded our Office of New Revere Residents, one of the most thoughtful and innovative programs that Revere ever initiated. Given my performance and given your 4 years, wouldn't you now admit that I did a pretty good job as mayor?
I think the fact that I walked into a mayor's office with a 4-page transition memo, 4 pages, to run a 400 full-time employee, $200 million business, doesn't tell me that you did a good job. The fact that we found over $2 million laying around in 86 different accounts tells me that you weren't doing your job. And the fact that we had to find an $85,000 employee working 19 hours a week tells me that you weren't doing a good job. Now, as every mayor will have, they have accomplishments. And that's what this race should be all about. As I said earlier, I set out 4 years ago with an awful lot of accomplishments. And we were ambitious. And we've transformed the city to what we have now, which is a city that's attracted Amazon to create 800 new jobs in our city. A city that will see millions of dollars of investment in commercial development at Suffolk Downs in a development that I invited Councilor Rizzo into to be part of, to understand, because he has an awful lot of vision and understanding of that site. He refused to show up because he didn't believe that this city could be the place where millions of square feet of commercial development can happen. He didn't believe that we had a vision for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And at the end of the day, no, Dan, I don't think you did a good job.
Rizzo, you may now reply.
So again, I've got to correct the narrative again. It was 167 million when you took over, not 200 million like you said. You're talking about Amazon as if it's HQ2. We all know it's a distribution facility like they have in Everett. That's going to bring, and I'm not sure that you even talked to Amazon to talk to them about how we're going to mitigate the impacts of 18-wheelers and vans going there. They had been calling around, and by the way, they're looking for 5 million square feet more space. So thankfully, and by the way, I'm happy that we have that empty building now occupied. I'm not putting down Amazon, but just, I think at the risk of overstating it, I think you're taking it a little bit too far. This is not HQ2. I believe that, if you look at what this administration has accomplished, their accomplishments, 311, that's a computer program. That's an accomplishment. We implemented See-Click-Fix. I mean, in fact, Cambridge, that's their #1 method of reporting incidents. Their #1 is See-Click-Fix. We implemented that. So people could go around, take a picture, and send it off. So to say that we did nothing to try and upgrade our infrastructure, to try to upgrade our community technologically and otherwise, again, is just simply a false narrative. And to listen to all of this, I found $2 million. It happened in an audit that he asked, and by the way, he publicly stated that we had a $2 million deficit. He had to finally admit to Councilor Rotundo that it was an anticipated deficit. Anticipated. And when he found the 2.2 million, he fails to say it was his outside auditors, and it was just reconciling accounts. You have to lose 2.2 million to find it. There was nothing lost. It was sitting in accounts. And he had to send back almost half of it to the state.
Thank you, Councilor Rizzo. Mayor Arrigo, you may now ask your question.
One of the most important functions of mayor, which is the city's CEO, is to make sure that the financial status of the city is sound. We've all seen what happens when a city gets close to bankruptcy or goes into receivership. So I asked my opponent, you've had some issues with finances, your campaign finances, as well as the city's finances. And we'll stick just to the city's finances because you do have a track record there. You didn't know that there was $2 million sitting in inactive accounts, failing to earn any interest. As the city's CEO, you failed to secure a surrounding community agreement, which meant that the city of Revere missed out on millions of dollars from our casino. I mentioned the $85,000 a year employee. You actually gave a raise to that employee just because he's a supporter, so that he was making over $80,000 a year for 19 hours of work a week. How can the voters trust you with their tax dollars and with the state and federal money that the city receives?
Well, thank you for that question. And we've heard this time and again about this surrounding community agreement. I don't know where you were during all those negotiations. I don't remember you ever being part of those meetings. Unlike you, well, you were a city councilor. I don't think you needed an invitation. You know, you talk about this surrounding community agreement, and what I've been saying right along is that we're not a surrounding community. We were a host community fighting for a license. And I've said right along that 10% of all license fees for their application and 6.5% of all gaming revenues go into a community trust fund that cities and towns have access to. I've got an email here from Nick Romano, one of your employees, who says the city of Revere has already received over $1 million from the Mass Gaming Commission. So you square that with the surrounding community agreement. I don't believe that the surrounding community agreement does anything for the city. We have access to money. You've known it, but you won't admit it. And you know, after a long time of requesting this information, thank God I finally got it, because now I understand that it's working the way it should and the way I anticipated it. So to keep talking about, and as far as that employee, now I think this is important, because that employee that he's talking about worked in the assessor's office, okay? And he's so outraged that he got a $20,000 raise, okay, which is what he was entitled to because he was a retired employee from the state. But what he doesn't tell you is 4 years later, the payroll in that very department is up close to $100,000, not doing any more work. The assessor's office budget, you can go check it, whether you check it on social media or wherever else you check it. You can check it and look. It's up close to $100,000, more than when I left office. And time up.
Mayor Arrigo, you may now reply.
You didn't answer the question. But, you know, I only talked about the fiscal mismanagement at the city level, but your ongoing pattern of financial mismanagement in every aspect of your campaign to this very day is clear. OCPF is currently investigating your campaign for illegal campaign contributions just as of yesterday. This is in addition to you being the only mayor in the city's history to be sanctioned by the state and penalized for having bad bookkeeping and failed disclosures in your campaign finance reports. The simple fact is, we can't trust you. We can't trust you to oversee the city's checkbook. We can't trust you to protect the residents of our city. I am proud on day one to have rolled up my sleeves and got a financial review to find $2 million. I'm proud that we made sure that our first priority was to make sure that taxpayer money would be something that would be guarded and that it would not be left without any oversight. These instances that I've spoken of are prime examples of why we put in policies and procedures and we put in HR department to ensure that the negligence of the past never happens again. Thank you.
Can I just respond? Those were personal attacks. You know, those allegations, he knows about the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, and I don't. Those are just baseless allegations that are not based in fact. It should not be allowed here. You should not be allowed to say things that aren't true.
It's true.
We are coming to the part 4 of the debate, which will be the closing statements from each candidate. We ask again that the audience please let the candidates have their say uninterrupted. We also ask that each candidate let the other have their say uninterrupted. Thank you.
The closing statement will be up to 4 minutes. Councilor Rizzo will be making his closing statement first. Councilor Rizzo, you may make your closing statement.
Thank you. I believe this election comes down to one basic premise. Who do you trust to lead our city over the next 4 years? When I took over as mayor, I had set priorities.
Sorry, you want to start over, Councilor Rizzo?
It's sad I have to start over. I'll start over. I believe this election comes down to one basic premise. Who do you trust to lead our city over the next 4 years? When I took over as mayor, I had set priorities to redesign Broadway, to build a new elementary school, to rebuild and create a state-of-the-art football stadium complex, to finally own and build 3 new Little League fields, and successfully revitalize Northgate by bringing in Market Basket. These are tangible goals that you can see right now. As for our high school, I couldn't have been more proud of their achievements. But now, sadly, our classrooms are being overcrowded and a new high school is desperately needed. We must continue to do all we can to give our young people the best chance for success at life. I will look to create internships both within City Hall and throughout our business community, and to create more vocational opportunities for the kids not interested in traditional higher education. To take control of development, I'll fight to pass a 2-year moratorium once again to end all of this uncontrolled, rampant, large-scale development and sit by idly while this city is being sold to the highest bidder. It's not about what the developers want. As I said before, it's about what Revere wants. I will incentivize commercial development. We will not allow developers like HYM at Suffolk Downs to roll over our city while still a year later negotiating with the City of Boston. The City of Boston has already pre-negotiated a $3.5 million payment to their affordable housing fund, and wouldn't that be nice for our senior housing? And an additional $700,000 to the city's job fund. This project was sold by Mayor Arrigo as Assembly Row. The only problem with it, that is, Assembly Row has 800 residential units. We're getting close to 3,000. This is the equivalent of almost 4 Assembly Rows at Suffolk Downs. And we haven't even talked about the other 10,000 residential units on the Boston side. How are our residents protected? How are people traveling Winthrop Ave or living in Beachmont ever going to get home? I am proud to say I was the sole vote against it. We need much more due diligence and negotiation, but unfortunately we didn't get it. And if you're wondering what Brian Arrigo's future plans are, look no further than 14 Eamon Street, a 3-family house that was torn down and given every possible variance that you could have, including a parking variance which required 0 parking spaces. Appalling. If you're a senior citizen, think about this additional development, the traffic it brings, and the emergency response times in case you need emergency assistance. Development impacts families that have young children as well, because the more overcrowded our classrooms, the slower and harder it is for teachers to teach. We've heard claims that crime is down 42% and that drug and narcotics are down 58%. Here's what we do know. This represents a culture of reactive policing versus proactive policing. The number for calls for service are up, and that is a fact. In 2015, Brian Arrigo said we lack professionalism. In less than 4 years, we've seen 2 separate incidents of public corruption, both leading to criminal arrests, the disappearance of $90,000 of parking meter revenues, and the sale of stolen water meters to unsuspecting Revere residents. The worst of this was that this administration failed to recognize that for 18 out of 24 months, they didn't realize there wasn't 1 quarter deposited in the parking meter account. If elected, I will monitor our city's finances each and every month like I did before. We need to avoid embarrassing situations like we've had for the last 4 years. And finally, if you want to see some insight as to who you can trust, look at Brian Arrigo's 2-minute and 1-second video on Revere TV YouTube. He claims we built a public safety facility. We built a new high school. We built a new fire station. We built a new community center. Yet there's just pictures of them. So you have more than pictures with me. And one last thing, he's representing all, okay.
Mayor Arrigo, you may now make your closing statement.
Thank you to the Journal and to our host tonight. Tonight, we had the opportunity to discuss what my opponent likes to call the tale of two mayors. On this, we do agree. There is a clear difference between the two of us. A mayor with vision, one who failed. A mayor who shows up versus one who didn't. A mayor who believes our city should be welcoming versus one who thinks being welcoming isn't what Revere is about. A mayor with character versus one sorely lacking. A mayor with facts on his side versus one willing to say or do anything to get elected. I am extremely proud of the work that we have done over the last 4 years, both accomplishing much of what we discussed during my campaign and fixing the fiasco that was left by my opponent. So you've heard clearly the differences between myself and my opponent tonight. And you've heard them from each of us. But what you haven't heard are the people from around the community that are saying that the roads are cleaner, the neighborhoods are safer, and that our future is bright. Our police, our fire, our DPW workers, the majority agree that I am the right person to lead the city of Revere. When you talk about our finances and our budget that my opponent attacks us on, look at the people who do the research on our finances, like our bond rating agencies that gave us the highest bond rating in the city's history. Even our governor, the most popular governor in the country, agrees that I am the most qualified person to continue moving our city forward. When we talk about crime, you can talk to a local police officer that knows that crime is down, or you can go and look at the FBI statistics. The FBI statistics that show that crime in Revere is at an all-time low. When we talk about traffic and transportation, you don't have to listen to me about it. Talk to our state senator, Senator Joe Boncory, who's the chair of the Transportation Committee. He agrees that I am the most qualified on this stage to work with, that I'm the only candidate who can put together the type of coalitions that we need to help solve regional traffic issues that we face. This isn't just coming from me. This is coming from the people that we know and that know the issues. They universally agree that I am the most qualified person to lead our city. Revere is on the right track, despite what my opponent says. And Revere will continue to get better with the vision and the ideas that my leadership brings. That's why I stand before you tonight and ask for your vote, and I hope that I've earned it on November 5th. Thank you.